what is that like next tier of automations that you don't have to do those little tasks for, right? And how you can get creative. And so I've spent hundreds of hours on using different tools, testing different tools, and I'm excited to put together 7 different ways that I'm using AI in my business and share that with you guys today. I'm going to share kind of what I do and then share a little bit later at the end how I actually do it. So I'm no like self-proclaimed AI expert. I spent time at Google and spent a lot of time helping people build products to use their data and really sell their data. So I worked with a lot of startups on just like taking all the different data that they have and then productizing it and ultimately monetizing it. However, I'm not the guy that's actually pushing the buttons. I wasn't the guy actually pushing the buttons. And so I'm not going to sit here and say I am an AI expert, but I've spent hundreds of hours implementing different use cases of AI and then also different use cases of how to automate little tasks in my short-term rental business, specifically for hosting and specifically just like anything that I have to do twice. I want to put it down on paper and figure out a process that either somebody else can execute or technology can execute. I'm very, OCD about that. If I have to do something twice, I got to document this and put it down on paper and figure out a way so that I don't have to do this again, especially if it's redundant. And, there's higher value tasks like picking up the phone and making phone calls to grow my business. That's something I wouldn't say I can't. That's something I choose not to automate. Like you can't really fake that. You can't automate that as much when it comes to having personal connections with homeowners, personal connections with partners in the business. But there are so many different tasks when you're hosting, especially at 30 properties, at 60, at 100, that you can be more efficient with and your team can be more efficient with to focus on providing a better service for your homeowners and ultimately hitting your revenue targets today too. So there's so many different flavors and ways to use AI. Everybody has different problems. So I'm going to go over just some problems that I've solved using AI and using technology to move our business faster and give you guys kind of a little behind the scenes look. I'm going to be sharing my screen. So if you're on your phone, make sure that you're zooming in. I'm going to try and make it as big as possible so you guys can see it, but it may be a little hard to see on the screen. So first and foremost, ChatGPT has really changed the game on creating what I call like a second brain, like a second coach. They have so much data that they have access to, that ChatGPT has access to, that we can use, and we don't have to Google things anymore. We don't have to go out and talk to a million different people. We can just give ChatGPT some prompts. And I like to start here at the beginning because it's pretty scary to think how powerful ChatGPT is. You just need to know how to use it and how to train it. So one of the things that I've used ChatGPT for, and I recommend everybody use ChatGPT for, is a branding and marketing assistant. So when it comes to, creating listing descriptions, creating marketing copy, creating captions, creating titles, I've created a custom GPT inside of ChatGPT where I just fill out a simple form and I've trained it based on what I know ranks really high on Airbnb's algorithm. So any new listing that I have or any listing that I need to refresh, all I do is go to that custom GPT that I've already trained and then I give it the information about the home, and then it creates in my format or in the highest, ranking format that I've found to make sure that we rank on page 1, page 2, is give it that information and it spits out a listing description for me. It spits out a title. It spits out captions for the different pictures that I give it as well, so that I don't have to go in and think and, use my brain or teach my assistant or teach my team how to use ChatGPT to do this or how to do this themselves. I've just got a custom GPT that does that. So that is one of the first use cases that I use ChatGPT for. The second one, and I think which is more important, is especially when you're growing a business, dialing in and getting very, very clear on what your offer is, what types of homes you serve. And then also, if you're in a new market, maybe you've got 1 property, maybe you got 2 properties, maybe you don't have any properties, using it to give you data on why people are traveling to certain markets and what people are really looking for. All right. I'm going to walk through an example here. I said, I was just playing around with this last night because an idea popped up in my head. And whenever an idea pops up in my head, I can either think about it a lot or I can talk to somebody about it. And I decided to talk to ChatGPT. And I just said, hey, we have NC Stays, which is our main brand, but I want to create a brand inside of NC Stays called NC Stays Luxe, which is a luxury rental brand. I need help crafting how this offer is different and how the messaging is different from homeowners. And then I told it, I want to focus on properties that bring in 100K or more in annual rent. And I want this program to feel special and exclusive. And the owner gets extra benefits that they don't get from any other property manager. And so when I thought about my portfolio, I really have, out of my 30 properties, I really have like 8 properties that I feel are luxe and that do over 100K. So to me, I'm like, all right, those are the properties that I can start with. They all have really nice bedding. They all have throw pillows and throw blankets. They all have really good design. They all use, not that cheap toilet paper, but that nice toilet paper. They all have those like nice supplies. They all have some sort of amenity that is not just your average, Airbnb. There's either a hot tub, a putting green, a sauna, a game room, a movie theater. And so I asked it to talk to, and Moji, I'm using ChatGPT. I asked it to help me with that brand positioning. And so it gave me some ideas on what some taglines would be, gave me some ideas on how to explain what, how we are different, and create that exclusivity for our homeowners, maybe some things to offer, like a white glove type of experience, advanced revenue optimization, VIP maintenance, interior design consultation. And so there's like brand standards a part of our brand, right? For this like luxe part of our company. And so it kind of creates, again, exclusivity. It creates this buzz we can use in the listing description. This is part of the NC Stays Luxe collection. And then when I'm talking to homeowners that have properties that are 100K or more, I can tell them about this different brand that we have and, how we can maybe market it better. Maybe we just have its own, social media that is different from, the regular social media that NC Stays has. We have about 2,000 people that follow us, probably a little bit more, follow us on Instagram, right? We have about 3,000 people on our email list. So how do we craft that messaging a little bit different? And so that is, one of the things that I recommend everybody use ChatGPT for. And then even more so, like I could ask this more things like, hey, how do I do this specifically for homes that are in Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, that are at the beach? What are some other things people come into town for? One of the things I also asked it was like, hey, I want to also add upgraded some supplies and, have quality things in the house. And it gave me some more ideas on what is actually needed to have this brand and to deserve this brand and to stand out above every other property manager that is out there. So I would say that is number one, helping, like using ChatGPT just as a sounding board, and then to give you ideas to craft in your offer more, because there's so many different property managers out there. There's so many co-hosts out there. So how are you going to differentiate your messaging and your company to go get the properties that you want? Right. And so this is just what I did last night. This is something that I'm going to put a plan together to launch, and I'll probably give them a few upgraded things like, a quarterly maintenance plan that is covered. I'm going to stay firm on my management fee, but, some other things that I don't offer to maybe some of the other properties that don't make as much. When the owner comes in, maybe like a supply package for the owner or a welcome gift for the owner, just different ideas that I can differentiate from other property managers that are in Atlantic Beach or whatever your market is. So I think that is first and foremost, number one, how I use ChatGPT, especially for branding and marketing. Next, what I want to get into is just some of the more basic stuff. Like everybody talks about HostBuddy AI, and also Hospitable has their own AI. I think maybe OwnerRez has some AI, Guesty's got some AI. So I want to talk about guest messaging here. So HostBuddy is one of my favorite tools. I've been using it for probably like 8 months now. The founder, Jay Ulrich, I really respect what he's done. He essentially has taken a ChatGPT, trained it up on your properties, and then allows you to use the messaging from them. They connect into your messaging and save you from different, disasters. Let's say like my team, we don't have 24/7 coverage. We have probably, I think, 18 hours a day coverage. And what happens those other 6 hours of the day? Right? We use HostBuddy to respond to the guests. If the guest is locked out, HostBuddy knows how to teach them how to get in or where the backup lockbox is to get in. HostBuddy also uses sentiment analysis to let us know, hey, the guest is upset about something or the guest is really happy about something. I don't use it to its full capacity. And I'm curious, guys, if you use chat or if you use HostBuddy, just let me know in the comments. But it can also use, predictive analysis on what a guest may need in the future and respond accordingly or create messaging accordingly to help really just respond to the guest faster. Also, I think upsells is something that I haven't used HostBuddy for, but I use Hospitable for. So guys, if you're not using HostBuddy or Hospitable AI or some AI for guest messaging, you're going to be falling behind. And you can train it to be personalized and train it to speak like you. It goes in and reads your past messages to speak like you. And so it really, it is the lowest hanging fruit, especially for folks that have 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 properties that don't have a team already to respond to guest messages. And even if you do, responding to guest messages is not the highest and best use of your time. Now, what happens if there's an issue? Like, guest gets locked out, HostBuddy can take care of that. But what happens if there's an issue that HostBuddy can't respond to that you actually need to take action on? One of my favorite things about HostBuddy, and Hospitable's coming out with this too, but one of my favorite things about HostBuddy is they have what's called action items. So action items are really when HostBuddy finds some sort of issue at the house, or we need to make a reservation change, or there's some maintenance that we need to do. They've got these action items and create this list of action items. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later. But when I first looked at HostBuddy, and I'm sure you guys are feeling this way too. When I first looked at HostBuddy, I was like, oh man, another tool. Like, oh man, another guest messaging tool. And so when I started using it, I was like, okay, I see the good use cases for this. It's when people are off. It also does sentiment analysis. Like I actually really like it. Maybe I don't need to hire a third VA for 24/7 coverage. So we implemented it. And then when they came out with this action items, this was a game changer for us because there's so many different tools that we can use. And what we primarily use for like issues was Slack. And so Slack is our messaging platform. Slack is just, it's similar to WhatsApp, but we have a channel per property where, hey, light bulb needs to be changed at the A-frame. And we would Slack that in there and then they would go take action on it. And, it would be tough to follow up on it. Well, with HostBuddy AI, what we're doing now is we're taking these action items, we put them in Slack, but then we also put them in Notion, which is what I consider my second brain. So Notion is something that I implemented about 4 months ago and is what I call my second brain. And it helps me with task management, but it helps me remember things about the property. So it is essentially a database that uses AI to help track maintenance items. And it kind of replaced Breezeway for me, but replaced maintenance items. My VA task list is all in Notion. But again, it started here with HostBuddy and being able to take messages and action items from HostBuddy that are issues, put them in Slack so we're aware of them, and then also put them in Notion so that we can keep track of them. So those two things right there has helped us just ultimately host better, but just be more organized and not feel overwhelmed with only a team of 3 people managing 30 properties. All right, so we've talked about the guest messaging. We've talked about upsells a little bit. So using Hospitable's AI, Hospitable, what they can do is and I'm sure some of the other platforms out there, the PMSs out there can do this too. But what I use Hospitable for is if there is a date open the day before, the night before the guest stays, or the night after the guest stays, a month before, and then 10 days before, I message them and say, hey, I'd love to give you a 10% discount if you want to come a day early or stay a day late. Just let me know. And I don't have any data on this. This is something that I do want to track in 2026. But every single week, I've got 30 properties. Every single week, there's at least 2 people that is saying, hey, yes, I'd like to take you up on that offer. So I don't have to move a finger. I have those automations set up in Hospitable. I don't charge for early check-in or late checkout. That's not something I feel I want to charge for right now, except for 2 of my properties that are more luxe and, they're massive properties. It's tougher to clean, but it's a game changer. You just make easy money. And then the guest is happy as well because they get a discount on the night before or the night after. Next is, and I'm going to get into more I'll start with Notion first. So I know you guys were asking about Notion. This has probably been the number one operations game changer for me in the last 3 years is implementing my second brain inside of Notion. And I'm going to show you guys what this looks like here. Let me share my screen. come in here to actions. Here we go. So this is what my Notion looks like. It is called Hospitality HQ. It is essentially my operating system, my one-stop shop for my management company. So it is an intranet. It has all my information about my team, our story, our KPIs, our mission and values, the team that we have, the different business departments, the SOP playbooks for the business departments as well, company policies, company etiquette, and also one of the biggest things for me is the SOP library. And then the master cheat sheet of information about my listings is all inside of Notion. And you can use AI to search that information. So let's say, for instance, I want to know what is let's do this. Send me the cleaning playbook for Uloku, which is one of my properties. And it will search my database, and I had to feed it all of this information. I had to migrate everything from my master cheat sheet all into this Notion playbook. And now my team, instead of searching for things, can just go into Note, which I call, again, my second brain, and find information that is stored here inside of this database. And I have all of the information on, how many pots and pans, how many linens, how many sheets, our linen count. So how many kings should we have? How many queens should we have? How many pillowcases should we have? How many towels should we have? We have all of those things, all the playbooks, the cleaning playbooks, the linen playbooks, the amenity playbooks, how to clean the hot tubs, how to do little things inside of all the properties. What are the quirks of the properties? All of that stuff is in here inside of Notion, and you can search for these things really with a click of a button and asking it some questions. So another question I could ask it, and you guys probably can't see this because it's probably pretty small, is what is the backup or what is the supply closet code at Surrey, which is one of my properties as well. If you're onboarding a new cleaner and you don't remember what the Surrey closet supply closet code is, it is in here inside of Notion. Same thing with all of our SOPs. So if I pull up our SOP playbook for our business departments, we've got multiple business departments. We got operations, we got property success, we've got sales and marketing, we've got finance and admin. All of our SOPs are in here, and they have responsible roles for them. They have responsible department for them. They have the last time they were edited. And let me give you guys a good example. So for instance, our onboarding, especially our onboarding checklists and SOPs are all in here inside of Notion. And I'm going to show you guys what that looks like. If I want to onboard a new property, that project is all being managed here inside of Notion. So this is one of the properties that we're currently onboarding right now down in Pine Knoll Shores. We've got the, step one tasks. We've got the on-site tasks. We got the photography tasks. We've got the listing and software setup tasks. We've got the final touches tasks. We have different stages and onboarding projects that are being managed here inside of Notion. Some other really cool things: daily tasks, the team's tasks, owner statements are tracked in here. Our weekly team meetings are tracked in here. Our contacts database is all tracked in here. And then the other cool thing too is whenever we're onboarding a property, we just send the owner a form to fill out all the information about the property. Where is what's the information for the utility companies? What's the information for where the backup generator is? What are the quirks? They just fill out a form, and all of that comes in here into this database. And so we don't have to spend hours upon hours upon hours onboarding a 7-bedroom home, because the homeowner already knows these things, and they're up in their brain, right? And it's just putting it into this second brain. So that is what I use Notion for, and that is what my team uses Notion for. And I don't know exactly how much time this has saved me over the last 3 months, especially onboarding 6 properties in the last 2 months. But I mean, it's got to be probably close to 100 hours just in the last 3 months. Now, it was a project to get this thing up and running. But again, this has replaced hours of my time, but also replaced 3 different tools that I was using for multiple different things. The other thing that I track in here too is any issues. So like I mentioned earlier, let's say there's a maintenance issue. Let's say there's a guest issue. Let's say a guest leaves something and we got to send it back to them. All of that is tracked here in Notion. And then on our weekly call, we just pull up, hey, what are the issues we have outstanding and how do we push them forward so that we can get a resolution as fast as possible? And then we measure how long it takes us to take care of those issues as well. So how long did it take me to get up and running, Eric? Great question. It took me, a solid a solid 8 weeks of working on it. I would say on a daily basis, there's times I spent hours on it. There's times I spent less time on it. I also worked with Michael Dinwiddie, who was on the podcast last week, on these templates, on these boards. So these are all boards that are customized for a short-term rental business. And so it's something that we're thinking about offering in the future. And if you guys want something like this, just comment Notion in the comments. And it's a lift to implement this in your business, and it's a lift to learn Notion as well. But I've seen how impactful it is for our business, and so we're thinking about helping you guys do that too, because again, it is saving so much time and so much effort to do this. So that's it on Notion. I probably only have like 10 minutes left, so I'm going to run through some other things that I do really quickly, and then tell you about how I do these things as well, and how, like, step by step. So the next thing, so I've got Notion and, HostBuddy for operations and Hospitable for operations. I've got ChatGPT I use for mainly marketing and branding, but revenue management is with 30 properties. It's a bear. And so I love to track how I'm doing to my goal for my rental. Okay. So what is my goal for the property? And how am I performing towards that goal? I set my own targets for every single property that I bring on. And so how do I track that? And it is, you can't do it in a PMS. Price Labs makes it very, very difficult to do it as well. So I've created a spreadsheet, and I'll show you guys what this looks like right here. I've created a spreadsheet that looks like this, that has all of my properties in it. And I'll show a better example. But what is my rental goal for that month? What is my management fee for that month? And then how am I doing towards that goal? That is really all I care about, is how much profit are we going to be making, or how much management commission are we going to be making? And then am I hitting the targets for each individual property? And so what I do is I use our PMS. I also use Price Labs, and I get that data into a spreadsheet. It is raw data. And then I take that information, I compare it next to my goal, and then have this nice, big, beautiful spreadsheet that I can look at and measure how each property is doing according to its goal. So this is a massive game changer for revenue management. Saves me so much time. It was so much time to put this together with the help of my team and help of a lot of good people. But this is a game changer. And this I use Zapier for. So if you guys are not familiar with Zapier, Zapier can connect into Hospitable and then connect into a Google Sheet and basically take all this data. Then I put some magic on it and create these calculations and create this nice bigger spreadsheet here to simplify the revenue management and hitting my revenue management targets. Now, taking it one step further, so taking this data and then taking the owner reports that I make using VR platform and creating a quarterly owner email. And so and this is probably not a good example, but what I'll do is I've actually trained a GPT inside of ChatGPT, and I've trained it to look at the data for an individual property and then look at the owner reports for an individual property and then put a very simple performance update for the property. So this is one that I did for Q3. I said, David, hope you're doing well. I wanted to share a quick update on the performance. We saw a strong boost in revenue this year, up 65% year over year. Granted, a big part of that was due to September being completely washed away by the hurricane last year. But the guests are loving the new hot tub. It's been mentioned in the last 2 reviews, and our ADR is up 5% because of that hot tub. Looking ahead, Q4 is a little bit light on early bookings. We're seeing shorter booking windows this year, but no need to worry. We're confident it'll still fit in nicely. And then I said the home is prepped and ready for Thanksgiving and holiday season. We're keeping a close eye on demand and pricing. Very simple. This is something that I used to do when I had like 10, 15, 20 properties. I was doing this really early on, but then I stopped because it was just way too much to do that for 20 properties at a time. Now ChatGPT has allowed me to do this way easier after I've trained it. So that is the next way I use Zapier and automate and use AI to help me spend less time hosting, but also provide a really good experience, because 99% of hosts are not doing this as well. All right, so you guys can see that. So any questions on that so far? I know I've got some Notion. Yeah, a lot of you guys are interested in Notion for sure. I don't blame you. It's been the best product I've invested in time and money over the last 3 years hosting, for sure. Really, since I made the switch back to Hospitable like 3 years ago from Guesty. So the revenue management stuff using Zapier, you can connect into Hospitable. You can connect into a lot of different PMSs, HostAway, Guesty, OwnerRez, and it's very step by step. But if you don't know what Zapier is, I mean, I've spent hundreds of hours in Zapier just like trying to figure out this stuff to create these dashboards and create these things that you guys can use too. So I've tried to make it very simple, the step-by-step on how to actually implement these things in your business. Because again, I'm not like an expert on this stuff. I'm not an expert on AI. I'm not an expert on automations, but I use problems and I try and solve them with technology first. So lastly, the only other thing I want to talk about is automating small little tasks. I respond to my wife here. So with all the different properties that we have, there's only a few things that I really want to know. And like I said, there's multiple different things that can happen. There's multiple different softwares. If you guys can let me know how many apps do you have on your phone, especially for the folks that manage more than like 5 properties, how many apps do you have on your phone for managing your short-term rental business? And when I say apps, I'm talking like Minute, your PMS, your climate control, cameras. What else? I mean, there's 5 right there off the top of my head, but there's just so many notifications going on all the time. So many notifications. And a lot of the times they used to go on this phone, right? Now, what I've used Zapier for is any of those notifications, they go into Slack instead because my team's in there and they're in there, when they're on their shift and they see those notifications. So I'm going to give some use cases here. When we receive less than a 5-star on a property, on a review, you guys know my 5-star guarantee. When we receive less than a 5-star, that automatically gets zapped into Slack and zapped into Notion to create an issue that we need to resolve based on that 4-star, 3-star, whatever it was. Why did that happen? Same thing. All of our reviews, they get zapped into Slack. When I say zapped, we use Zapier to do that. I mentioned HostBuddy, how I use it there. When the temperature is too low in a home, I've got Minute monitoring that. When there's noise, when there's smoke, when there's high humidity, all of that gets zapped into Slack. So I'm not having to have, again, these like hundreds of different apps all up at one time. When batteries are low on the locks or on Ring, that gets zapped into Slack. When somebody responds to one of our direct booking campaigns, responds at Go High level, that gets zapped into Slack. When somebody inquires on my website, inquires to be on the co-host platform, that gets zapped into Slack. So I don't have to check a bunch of different things. I can just check Slack. When utilities are out at any of my properties, that gets zapped into Slack. So automating those notifications all into one place for your team to manage. Again, I used to get all of these things and then I would go into Slack and be like, hey guys, utilities are out of Yoloku. Like we don't do that anymore. It is all centralized in Slack. And then if it needs to be managed, then we put that in Notion. So Manish said 54 properties, maybe 7, rest managed by my team. Exactly. So how do you get these notifications off of your plate and being managed by your team? That is the ultimate game changer. So Eric said 9, Brad said 25, Dave said 10, Lanier said 8. It's just, there's too many, like Steven said. So that's it, guys. So I went through, how I use ChatGPT for branding and marketing. I went through how I use HostBuddy for guest messaging, Hospitable AI for guest messaging. I went through upsells using Hospitable. I went through how I use it for revenue management, how I use Zapier and the spreadsheets for revenue management, and how all of that is automated, how I create owner emails based on the data for each individual property, and then went through how I created a second brain using Notion AI and using just Notion as like really an operating system for our business to automate task management, onboardings, follow-ups, KPIs, issues, that sort of thing. And then lastly, automating all of those notifications. Those are the things that I use AI and automations for to host better at the end of the day. Let me know if you guys are doing anything as well. I mentioned this is kind of like what I'm doing. Some other things that I'm doing, like I want to create a CFO agent using ChatGPT to analyze my P&L. Same thing, a revenue manager agent. So like, hey, based on the current data that you see for the market, what changes should I make? Those are some other things that I'm working on creating right now, but it's just not on. It's on the to-do list, but not priority. That's going to really make us that much more money right now. I want to help you guys implement these things. But again, I've spent like hundreds of hours on this, but you guys can now implement this in probably less than like 2 to 3 hours just with what I've created. And so I've created essentially like a mini course that is step-by-step on how to do those really 6 things. And I've created 5 videos so far. I got to create a 6th. But all of these videos are under 10 minutes on how to use ChatGPT, how to create your second brain, how to use automations using Zapier, how to create those owner emails, how to set up the revenue management stuff. And I've created these videos step by step and SOPs that go with them to help you guys do this. Again, I've spent hundreds of hours on this, a lot of time on creating these different automations, breaking it, testing it, fixing it. If you guys are interested and want these videos and want this mini course, plus access to Q&A support. So you want to ask me questions, like you're actually implementing these things and you're like, hey, Mike, like, what do I do next? Like, hey, I'm stuck here. We'll have like a separate community for that. But I wanted to just literally give it away for $197. So $197. You can have access to these trainings, my templates and SOPs. Again, they're not like, this is not like 8 hours of videos. These are like 10-minute or less videos, SOPs, plus support and training for $197 one time. That's it. And all you got to do is go to strsecrets.com/AI, strsecrets.com/AI. And there is a checkout link. It explains the different videos that I've got in there. I can actually share my screen and show you guys what that looks like. This was a topic that I've been saving for a while now. You'll get the branding and content, custom GPT. I'm going to do a training on creating your second brain. Again, it's going to be less than 10 minutes. How to use upsells to make more money, and then how to create your owner emails, how to create the revenue management behind that too. And then step by step, like how to use Zapier to automate like little stuff that you don't need to be doing, centralizing communications, that sort of thing. It's going to be a self-paced mini course. There's going to be 6 videos. They'll have Q&A support as well, but they'll come with SOPs too. Just $197. If you guys want to implement this, like get this now. So strsecrets.com/AI is where you need to go. So again, for those of you that are in the mastermind, the Short-Term Rental Secrets Mastermind, this will be in the school classroom next week. So this is not something you guys need to go pay for unless you want to, put the $197 in, and I'll donate it to a charity this month. But just you got to let me know. But I think it's something that will help a lot of people. Again, like I really want to help people host better. Got another email today about our HOA in Brevard that wants to, there's another lawsuit about short-term rentals that's going on right now. And they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting to get STRs banned in our HOA because of 2 bad properties, because of 2 bad property managers, one managed by Vacasa, one managed by Evolve. We have to raise the level of hosting in our areas. So, states, cities, HOAs, towns, they're all trying to regulate short-term rentals somehow. But if we raise the standard on hosting and being good neighbors, I think the sentiment about Airbnb and short-term rentals is going to change, especially in our vacation rental markets. So you go to strsecrets.com/AI, get this for $197. All right, guys, take care. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week. We'll see you guys next week.